Hello. Can you see me now, Catherine? I'm going to refresh this. I've got 2 minutes before the scheduled major link goes out saying that we're already live and it's posted in the group. Right, that's live now. If I click that, look at that, magic. Oh, okay, guys. I'm on just a couple of minutes early, guys, so that I can send some links around. So let me just quickly do that now. I've now posted in the Facebook group. And now I will post, I'll send you guys an email. We'll start in just a minute. Okay, that should be good. That's done. All right, guys. Hey, I can see that you are on. All right, thank you for letting me know, Vanessa and Catherine. Vanessa, who's singing? Who is singing? It's my husband.
No, it's not. Ziggy Alberts.
Ziggy Alberts. Oh, someone's already answered it, Ziggy. All right, so let me just make sure that Kirsty's able to join us, guys. You guys, thanks for being so prompt. It's wonderful. All right, I'm just going to ask Kirsty where she's at. Can you see that? This is the first time that we've ever gone live using this software and on YouTube, so we're just learning the ropes. Can you see Kirsty waiting anywhere?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
She's got a request to join.
All right, guys. Is my phone charged yet? It's not charged. Oh, okay. Ah, there she is. All right. Watson family. Oh, you should be able to see us now, Watson family. Vanessa. Okay, beautiful. All right, I'm going to let Kirsty in. Hey, Kirsty.
Hello. How are you?
I think I need to enable. Kirsty, can you try and say hello again?
Hello. Can you hear me?
Can anyone else hear Kirsty, or is it just me that can't?
My mic is on.
Let's see here. You can hear me, Kirsty?
Yeah.
All right. Why can't? Okay, everyone else can hear Kirsty, but I can't.
It says on my end that it's fine. So, hello, everyone. If you can hear me, it's saying on my end that you can hear me and see me.
Oh, that's because I muted it down here and then unmuted it. The joys of technology. Do you know what, guys? For the last 2 hours, I'd say, we've been experimenting with different ways to go live on YouTube. It's not very fun, but I've been looking forward to this live Q&A for a while, and we have not seen so many questions come through before. It has just been insane. We're going to be talking a lot about food tonight, guys. Kirsty's printed it off. She's got pages and pages of questions there, guys. We may not get through it all tonight, but we're going to try our very best. And if we don't, then we'll make sure you guys still get your answers.
Yeah.
So we're still trying to make sure that Kirsty's got some sound. Kirsty, can you try again? I've just unplugged my mic.
Okay, can you hear me now?
No.
Oh. So on my, you got it?
Okay, so that's done.
Try again.
I've just unplugged my mic.
Okay, can you hear me now?
No.
So on my, you got it?
How do I show? Okay. All right, done. Okay, amazing. We are now.
Hello.
We're now sorted. Okay. All right, thanks guys for being so patient. We're only a few minutes in. So guys, we're almost at the end of our 10-day challenge. How have you been enjoying it? Kirsty, how have you been enjoying it?
Good. I've actually been loving hearing the feedback from Kylie and Beck and our team that have been in there every day, and loving people asking really awesome questions. It's so nice to hear people being curious and asking questions because they've learned something. So I'm so stoked about that, because it's the whole point, is making sure everyone's learned something. You've got some take-home messages, and it just sparked a bit of a wow, I had no idea about that.
It has been amazing to watch everyone's engagement. You have got to go back, Kirsty, into the group and see yesterday's thread with the sesame seed challenge. It is hilarious. There's hundreds of people posting their pictures of them downing their sesame seeds. It was so great.
I haven't seen that one. I'll have to go in and have a look.
Do it. It's so great.
Yeah.
So later on, we'll give out a big prize to someone. Jordan's going to choose a winner while we're going through our questions.
Awesome.
But guys, I really just want to take my hat off to you all, because it's no small feat to tune in for 10 days. Life is busy, and, you've really got to be committed to your health to really invest the time and the interest and the energy into doing something like this with us. And Kirsty and I are just so thrilled that you've come through this so far, 9 days. We've still got one more challenge to go tomorrow. And we're just really happy to be here with you to answer your questions. And like I said, there's a lot of them. So we are going to get started onto those questions in a second. Kirsty, did you want to say anything before we dive in?
No, I'm just so excited to get started on it all. So no, all good.
So guys, we're going to finish at our 9 p.m. tonight, because sleep is important. So yeah, like I said, if we don't get through everything, we'll make sure that we do our best to make sure we maybe send a recording through with some more answers, or we'll hook you up with something to help you out there. Yeah. All right, so I'm going to pull up these questions, guys. Because there are quite a few questions, we have categorized them into different topics. And so if your question isn't read out word for word, then we've made sure that we've answered it within another question or topic, and we've grouped some together. So if you've got a question now while you're listening, maybe just hold off putting it in the live thread comments, and I'll touch base with you guys soon to ask if there's live questions then. Otherwise, it's going to get lost in the thread. Yeah.
And I just pressed on the comments button instead of the other button, which was the private chats. And it's so cool to see everyone in there. And lots of culture wellness crew in there as well. So that's
beautiful. Cool. Yes, I'm recognizing lots of names too. So nice to have. And I'm not sure if you guys are aware, but we did not place any ads for this challenge. It has just been our two beautiful communities coming together to enjoy this time together. And it's been really nice to have that intimate space to do that with. Yeah. All right, so let's do these questions. We've got a couple of general fibre questions first, Kirsty. The first one is kind of going back to that introduction video where you said that we should be aiming for well over 35 grams of fibre a day is what we should work up to over time. There were quite a few questions over the 9 days of people asking, how does that differ for men who might be larger in stature or little children? So how would you answer that question?
Yeah. So the best way to answer that is to take it all one step back and remember that you get a lot of your energy and you make a lot of your energy from your fiber consumption. And so if you are a very energetic person, if you need a lot of energy, if you are, trying to get the most out of your body, which all of us should be, then we really want to make sure that we've got a high fiber consumption. And so, we can see this whole, halve it for kids and, it wouldn't be as much for an 18-year-old boy versus a 40-year-old man. But when we think about how much energy we want to get from the fiber and what it does with our gut microbiome, we want to have the amount that makes us satiated. So, the RDIs on, how much should we have is going to differ for every single person. So I want to get that out there and make this really clear from the get-go that, and it's going to get really annoying for everyone because I'm not going to give you a number and I'm not going to say, you know, children should have this and adults should have that, because everyone's completely different. So some of you may or may not know my health history. It was so bad that if I had one tiny little bit of fibre, the tiniest bit of fibre, I would have been on the toilet for 3 or 4 days. So I had to go really low and slow, small increments at a time, and slowly introduce it, because I just didn't have the gut bugs to actually digest and assimilate and utilize that fibre. So we can't go with the RDI. We have to go with what's going on for us and what's happening for us within ourselves as an individual person. So, you know, if your child is eating a robust amount of fibre and they can digest it, it's coming out beautifully in a nice long number 4 stool, and they're feeling really satiated and they're not asking for food all the time, then you've hit the jackpot. You have got the right amount of fibre. And that would be the same for an adult. If your child or an adult or yourself is getting diarrhea, your transit time is really quick. And if so, like 2 to 4 hours, some people will eat something and then it will pass through, then you need to drop your fibre right down. So, and then slowly work up. So everyone's daily dose and everyone's amount is going to be different. So that's really hard, and you have to trust yourself and tune into yourself to know how much to have.
And I think that's really quite wise words. You know, we can't just live by a textbook because we are all so different. And it does encourage us to really pay attention to, because how often do we just go through life and not look in the toilet bowl before we flush? You know, and we're not aware of our children's, you know, number 2s because they're independent. So it's really a good reminder to just check in and stay connected with that. So,
and I think, you know, I used to beat myself up all the time because I knew and understood the research, and we have been told, you know, fibre. So I would keep trying to eat all of this fibre, and my system, my body, my microbes just wasn't there yet. So if that is some people, you know, don't beat yourself up about it. You know, investigate, understand, go slow, and slowly build up to it, rather than, you know, if I'm not having my recommended dose of grams and I'm not measuring it appropriately, then I'm doing something wrong. And I see that in our clinic all the time, people feeling like they're doing something wrong.
And actually, we should just really, before we move on to the next question, I should really mention too that even though in this challenge we have measured our fibre, obviously that was really important to become self-aware, just to gain that self-awareness, but we shouldn't be obsessing over continuing to count our fibre grams ongoing all the time. That's just not something that we need to do, especially if we're focusing on getting our food from fruits and veggies and whole foods. Okay. So there's been a few people asking, can we get too much fibre?
So your body will have this satiating set point. So you eventually will feel very full and very satiated, and you will stop if your digestion is working beautifully, if all of your hormone levels, like your leptin levels, your ghrelin levels, if they're all working beautifully, you will stop. And so you can't get too much fibre. But once again, if there's dysbiosis, if it's the wrong fibre, or if you don't have the right microbes to digest that fibre, yes, absolutely. You can have too much fibre and it can end up backfiring on you. So once again, tuning in. So the fact that, I mean, it's been awesome. You guys have been measuring your fibre, and then you can work out, wow, at this level, I felt awesome. My stools were great. My energy was great. You know, I didn't have any bloating. That was my sweet spot. So for some people, yes, they can have too much fibre. Others, holy smokes, they can eat so much fibre and it works really well for their gut.
So again, that speaks back to that issue of just staying in tune with your body.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I don't want to sound like I'm pushing you along, but there are quite a few questions to get through. Okay. All right. So Mark actually asked, not your Mark, different Mark, asked, he follows a low-carb lifestyle, and so it's hard to find much information on fibre for people who are following that low carb lifestyle. So he wants to know what's the basis of reaching for that 35 grams of fiber a day, and how can he get more in on that low carb diet?
Yeah, that's an awesome question. So, Mark, I'm the same. I follow a ketogenic diet, and I think we see the ketogenic diet as being low fiber and quite devoid of fiber, and it's certainly not the case. So there is a plethora of vegetables that are low carb. They're extremely high in fiber. So adding lots of vegetables in is very important, but also you can ferment out heaps and heaps and heaps of the higher carb vegetables, like carrots. You can ferment out apples, you can ferment pears, and even like using the Culture Wellness diversity dough, you can ferment out fibers themselves and coconut flours and all these sorts of things. So you've got the fiber but not the carbohydrate load. So you can absolutely get truckloads of fiber in, but that's where the beauty of fermented foods comes in. So you can, and sauerkrauts and things, you can get, have a big tablespoon of sauerkraut with your dinner, and that's going to provide that robust amount of fiber. Or you can, make some little fermented seed crackers, and you're going to get your fiber, but you're going to keep those carbs and those sugars low.
I know a lot of people found that topic really fascinating. I think it was day 3 that we made the diversity dough quiche.
Yeah.
And it's definitely a topic that it's not really well known that you can actually ferment your flours and your regular food.
Like it was, everything that I've done over the years for myself and then Cultured Wellness has just been absolute problem solving. Like, so for me, it was, okay, I can't have carbs or sugars because my metabolism is just, really stuffed up. And so I was like, okay, how am I going to solve this? By keeping fiber, polyphenols, keeping all of that diversity, richness, color in. And so I was like, I'll just ferment everything. So, and off it went. That's how it all sort of started.
That's so great. Now look what you've created. It's so easy too, right? I mean, we always have the coconut water kefir in the fridge. And I know you and I say, excuse me, you and I say that word differently, but it doesn't really matter. But I always have that kefir in the fridge, and you can really easily just throw that on some carrot sticks and leave it out, and that's your fermenting done. It's quite simple to do. So if anyone's interested in doing that, I might actually link you to a ebook where you can learn how to ferment your foods really easily too. So at the end tomorrow, I'll send through some links for that.
Beautiful.
So guys, there's a few questions I'm going to condense into one, because it's all about cooking food and how it can change its fiber content, how it can change its resistant starch content. How does heat and cooking change those things?
Yeah. So when we I'll use cooked and cooled rice, for example, because it's such a great example. So white rice, when it is cooked and it's hot, it can actually really spike your blood glucose levels. It can spike your insulin, and it's not great for our body or for our metabolism. But when it is cooled for more than 12 hours and ideally 24 hours,
I didn't know that time frame. That's interesting.
Yeah. So, and then it builds a resistant starch. So the resistant starch molecules build, and then suddenly it has almost the reverse effect. It blunts your insulin response when you eat it. And it is that resistant starch, as we talked about. It resists digestion and goes straight down. So the cooking of it completely changes it. And like green banana flour, for example, if you cook with that, the integrity of it isn't as great. So it's not going to have as much resistant starch as if you had it raw. So fibers do change with cooking, and certainly with some vegetables, when you cook them, the fiber consistency changes of it and the availability of it changes. But for some people, if they've got inflamed guts, for some people, if their body can't handle too much fiber, it is much better to cook it first, so your body can assimilate it and it makes it easier. So, how we prepare the food also makes a big difference to how our little microbes, what they do with it, how they utilize it, and then how they grow.
So would I be right then in saying that to create the resistant starch, sometimes you need to cook and cool a food, obviously, but then if you reheat that food, then that's when it can get changed, right?
So you can reheat the food, but it's only you can really only reheat it to about 100 degrees. So we'll go back to the cooked and cooled rice example. So you've cooked your rice. The next day, you're making it as a beautiful stir fry, but you would only just warm it up. If it went past 100 degrees, the resistant starch clumps that formed will end up breaking down, and then you'll start to see that spike in insulin and changes in what's going on in your body when it eats the food.
Beautiful.
Yeah, but you can heat it enough that you're not eating cold rice with beautiful stir fry. It's like, what's going on here?
Well, thank you for clarifying that, because there were quite a few questions on that. So I hope that clarifies that for you guys in the comments there too. Excuse me. Excuse me. Okay, so when it comes to water intake, I know that we touched on this in the challenge. We challenged everyone to drink more water, to realize how much water they're drinking. And it actually started quite a conversation with my children, because one of my kids was constipated one morning, and I said, well, let's track how much water you're having for the day. And
awesome.
I asked her to tell me at the end of the day, end of the school day. I said, okay, so you took your 750 ml bottle to school. How much of it did you drink? She said 2 sips for the day at school. And so I think it's really imperative that we talk to our kids about their water intake, because they're so busy at school. They don't often think about it. Some people love to drink water like me, but it's just something that other people don't really enjoy sometimes. So it's important to touch base with our little ones about that too. But the question is, how much water should we be aiming for?
Yeah. So around that 2 to 3 litres is the perfect amount of water. But we get a lot of pushback and a lot of resistance from people. Like, I feel gross when I drink water. I can literally feel like the wobble, wobble, bubble, bubble going on in my gut when I drink it. It feels like I'm in a waterbed when I drink the water. I don't like it. It makes me burp. Like, I hear a lot of this from, people we work with, that water makes them feel really gross, and so they don't drink it. So there's a few reasons for that. And if we have dysbiosis in our bowel, we're not going to absorb the water to make the stools. And that's a really important thing to note. So if you're one of those people that you drink water and you literally get bloated just from having a glass of water, which is really common. People say it to me all the time. I don't drink water, it makes me bloated. And then, you get the, what? Like, how would water make you bloated? But if you don't have the microbes doing their thing in your gut, they won't absorb the water and it will make you feel bloated. And so therefore people don't drink it. They avoid it. And of course we want to fix the gut problem so we can drink the water, rather than I just won't drink water and be really dehydrated all the time. The other thing is our stomach acid needs to be really, really acidic. So we want our stomach, where the water goes in, to be super, super acidic. Most people have really alkaline stomachs these days from stress and from all sorts of things, and you can get the same feeling. So the water goes in, washes around, feels really bloated, really uncomfortable. So if people struggle to drink water, there's a reason why, and you need to change that. You need to look into it.
Interesting. And that might sound counterintuitive to some people, because we hear a lot about wanting to make our bodies alkaline, but our stomachs don't want to be
there.
Yeah,
it's like a pH of about 1 to 1.5. Like, so we want, when the food goes into that stomach, to, any other pathogens or little worms or bugs that are in our food that go down there, we want that acid to just absolutely fry it, and we want it to be able to digest the protein.
I'm picturing that in my head right now. Roseanne has asked a question. I'm going to read it to you. It says, I'm finding in winter it's easier to get kids to eat apples and pears if I stew them than add them to yogurt in their lunch that way. I leave the skin on and only add spices, no sugar. She's asked the question, does cooking change the fibre at all, which we've covered? Also, blending things, a soup with lots of green things in it, or legumes, etc. Does blending them change the fibre content or availability?
No, so the blending will just make it far easier for you to digest. So the blending will break down the cellulose wall on the outside. Now, cooking will do that too. And blending, if you're blending raw vegetables, that will break down the cellulose wall. Just makes it much easier to digest, but it will still certainly give you lots of beautiful fibre.
Yeah. And doesn't blending also help your body to release your energy slowly through the day rather than a big spike?
It depends what you're eating and what you're having. So people have smoothies that are full of sugar, and so there'll just be a really big spike. But if they're, beautiful, low glycemic, really nice, lots of beautiful vegetables, then that will help assimilate it through.
Yeah, beautiful. Thank you. Oh, I was just reading Joanne's comment. All right, Dee has asked something more about fruit, which kind of goes along with those smoothies that we sometimes have that can be too high in sugar. She's asked, one of her daughters just loves having fruit. Should I be limiting her fruit intake? Is the natural sugar, can that become too high for her body?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So a child's brain works on fat. So our brain is 80% fat and really needs a huge amount of fat for it to work. So if our kids are filling up on fruit all day long, then there's not much room left in their tummies. They're not asking for those beautiful, robust foods that are full of fat that feeds the brain so they can concentrate, they can learn, they can sleep. And so just from a learning perspective alone, and from a satiating perspective alone, you would really want to reduce those fruits down so you can add more fats in. But also, yes, like fruits are extremely high in sugar. And so I would be limiting 1 to 2 pieces of fruit a day. Now, if you
fermenting them,
fermenting them, you can go to town. But if you have a child that is having 1 to 2 pieces of fruit a day, and then they're hanging out in the kitchen and they're in the fridge and they're hovering over the fruit bowl, and it's this constant like, oh, stop asking me for fruit, like that just constant persistence, then that's just such a great time to sit down with them and are you hungry all the time? Are you tired in your head? Do you feel brain, foggy? So ask them things about brain fog. Do you constantly feel like, you're always wanting to eat? They're really important questions to ask your child because it tells us a lot about whether they're satiated, whether they're getting the right nutrients, whether they are getting enough fiber in their diet, and whether they're getting enough protein. But yes, I would absolutely be limiting fruit, mainly because we've got lots of different sugars in fruit as well, and fructose is a big one. So apples have a huge amount of fructose, and we know fructose is the villain when it comes to causing our triglycerides to go up with regards to heart issues. It's not the fat, it's the sugar and the carbohydrates that makes it go up. So we don't want to be setting this scene for our kids early on where they're getting a lot of fructose, because the body doesn't really care whether it was from an apple or it was from something from McDonald's. It sees sugar as the same when it goes in. So, we just got to make sure we get that sugar content in their diet right.
Even if it's accompanied with the fibre from a piece of fruit?
If it's accompanied with the fibre, it's much, much better, but the body still has to go through those hormonal processes. The liver still has to manage it and still has to work it out. So you would always want to eat an apple anyway. I'm not saying no one misquote me there, all right?
No, when you said increase those good fats and the protein, and I have to tell you, that was a game changer for me a couple of years ago. I came down with adrenal fatigue. I had been pushing myself way too hard for a newborn baby and business, and the advice that was given to me by my naturopath was to up the good fats and also up the protein. And that in itself, I didn't even go on any of the supplements. I just did that and more sleep, and it turned me around. It was quite an eye-opener for me.
It's amazing. And unfortunately, most kids, well, everyone really, adults that have to go to work, but most kids, when they go to school, they're really struggling from some form of adrenal fatigue as well, because school's hardcore. There's all the concentration and there's the trying to work out, like, are they friends with me or not? And what does my teacher expect from me? And all my after-school sport and all that sort of stuff. So it is absolutely vital to have that protein and fat in. We can't help our kids run, really efficiently, their bodies to run efficiently without it.
Yeah, that's right. Thank you. Vanessa's actually asked fats like what? So what kind of fats are you talking about? Vanessa wants to know.
So all sorts of fats. So certainly like avocado is a great go-to. So ghee is an amazing go-to. It's got butyrate in it, which feeds and the cells, like the lining the cells of our gut and supports brain function, and butyrate. You can also go for coconut oils as well, olive oil, all those beautiful whole foods fats that we have. So
now's the great segue into the recent studies. Well, actually, there's quite a few historical studies, but another recent study has just come to light about saturated fats. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so this whole concept and understanding of fats cause, heart disease, cause cardiac issues, that whole concept has just been absolutely debunked in the literature. And it just makes me so cross that it hasn't got out to the public as much as it should be. But there was an article in the Australian just on the weekend about how we got it wrong and how we need to now start changing and getting that understanding of fat is not the villain. Carbohydrates and sugar are the villain. So we want to be looking at our triglycerides and what's going on for them. They're when we look at having our cholesterol checked, the triglycerides are the things that we've got to care for, and we've got to look at them, and we want them under 1 when we look at our test results. And our triglycerides will adjust and change with regards to sugars and sugars and carbohydrates. Fats won't change those triglycerides that are causing the issues. So there's some really cool examples and new studies that are coming out. And we'll put one up here, or we'll put it on afterwards, because I think Kylie's on there at the moment, of some really awesome, landmark studies that are coming through. But it's just so sad. It's been years now. It's like, that's debunked. We need to move forward from this.
It's actually a massive deal. It's a massive deal. This is something that we have been taught for a long time, that we've known in the recent years that good fats are good, but we've been taught that all saturated fats are detrimental to our health, but it's not. If we're getting it from a whole food source, then we're sweet. So tell me just quickly about coconut oil. That was very a hot topic that was being debated for a long time. So how does this study now view coconut oil?
Yeah, so coconut oil, because of, obviously it supports so many metabolites and so many metabolic functions in the body, even though it, is a saturated fat, it supports our brain, it supports metabolism. And, we now know that coconut oil has such a wonderful effect on supporting our body to be metabolically flexible. So once again, coconut oil was it was the villain. It was all of the, this is the terrible thing. But, we're not going to get into it, but it was kind of driven from a mass media kind of way of looking at the world so we could buy low fat products. So, and coconut oil is obviously a beautiful product. There's a lot of it around and we can access it really easily, and it's not going to push your triglycerides up. So it's the same thing. It's, just as wonderful as someone's just written there, the Mediterranean diet. Yeah, absolutely. It's going to have, the same effect as the olive oil.
Okay, so you were touching on triglycerides there. Can you just briefly tell us, before we move on to the next question, MCT oil has, and also coconut flour has medium chain triglycerides. How does that differ, and do we want those in our diet?
Yeah, so the medium chain triglycerides, and then we've got the short chain and the long chain triglycerides, and they all have different carbons and compounds for how they affect us and how our liver metabolizes them. So if you have, too many medium chain triglycerides, like if you spend your whole day having that without fiber and without supporting your liver, then you are going to have some issues. There's absolutely no doubt about that. But if your liver function is beautiful, if you're having, a perfect amount and you're having your fiber, then you're not going to have any problems because of the way that our liver metabolizes those medium chain triglycerides.
Okay, wise words again. Not a black and white answer, and I think that's what I love about your approach so much, is that it's not just a one size fits all. We're also different, and we need to pay attention to how that.
Yeah, and if our liver doesn't work, it doesn't matter what you eat. Nothing's going to really happen well. So, once again, you look at your body as this beautiful, complete system, and look at all those functions and what's happening. Someone's got a child addicted to fruit. Oh, okay, Sally. We need to talk. That's my greatest joy, is helping kids with issues like that.
What we'll do tomorrow is I will post in the group the best way to get in contact with Kirsty and her team. So if you've got questions like yours, Sally, that are quite specific and individualized, you can really target that personalized response.
Yeah.
Now, Mecca was asking, how do we manage weight management with all this beautiful fiber intake? We did do a video, excuse me, we did do a video on how fiber actually helps us manage a healthy weight. But can you touch on that if there's people concerned still about having so much fiber that it affects our weight negatively?
Yeah, okay. So the first thing is, if you feel or you are finding that, yes, I've added all this beautiful fiber in, I've gone whole foods, and I still can't manage my weight, I feel like I'm really, pushing up against something, I would really investigate that. So I would, test, don't guess, and get a gut microbiome test, because you may be missing these beautiful microbes that help us to be able to utilize that fiber to blunt that insulin and that blood glucose spike to help you manage your weight. You might have undigested food happening that spikes inflammation, or you might have gut dysbiosis like, parasites or any form of infection, and it doesn't matter how much fiber you're having or what you're doing, your body will be inflamed and you'll feel like you're really pushing against it all the time. So that's a great example of investigating. So what levers to pull to get your body an absolute metabolism machine, and so you don't have to be fighting all the time.
Beautiful, thank you. Phoebe's just asked for ideas for food for kids that's both high fat and protein. Phoebe, off the top of my head, I would say there's a recipe that I go to again and again. I'll post it for you tomorrow. I have to make a note so I don't forget. Hemp seed pikelets. They just chuck it all in the blender. Yeah, it's hemp seed pikelets. You chuck it all in the blender and you make them really quick. The other thing that our kids have a lot are smoothies, obviously, if you saw the day 2 video. Bliss balls is another great one. So hemp seeds for protein, for plant-based protein. For good fats, you can go for obviously avocado, you've got coconut oil, coconut cream, you've got your cultured yogurt, you've got lots of other things that you can do. I would be happy to put together a little list of snack and meal ideas for kids that fit those, that tick those boxes, if you like. Now, while I check the section, Kirsty, do you have any other suggestions for Phoebe?
Well, yes, I do. And further on from that, Katie has said, how do you get more butyrate into your child's diet? So I'll put those two together. So to have a beautiful snack that's high in fat, getting ghee and butter into the diet, and high amounts of it, is a great way to get butyrate, which produces our energy, and a great way to get beautiful fats in there. So once again, if you've got some ghee, and you can put it together, you can make little gummies, and you can use that ghee in with those gummies. You can make like a little hot chocolate using either ghee or the butter, and you can blitz that with some coconut cream, and then you can add in some gelatin for all the beautiful protein and make these gummies, and they're just quick and easy, very, very easy to have. And once again, don't forget the humble egg. Like, don't forget about eggs. Oh, my goodness.
You have a meal.
So it's a complete food source. So if you've got a beautiful, and of course I'm going to say diversity dough because I love it so much, but if you've got a beautiful slice of diversity dough, which is the fermented sourdough, you've got some butter on the top, and, then you have a boiled egg next to it. That is just like an ultimate beautiful snack for kids that's going to have prebiotics, probiotics. It's going to have the ghee with the butyrate, and of course the eggs have got all those B vitamins. It's got B6, which we know is so important for kids that struggle with anxiety, or kids or adults with anxiety, and super quick and easy to make. Do it on the run, and you can make boiled eggs, and you can boil all 12 of them from a carton. Whack them all in when you get your carton, have them in the fridge, and that's just the go-to. You just go and grab them. So everything has to be done in bulk. I'm not interested.
And I think that most of us, if we're
I don't have 58 kids like you do, and I still want to do it in bulk.
All right, it's 8:38, so we're going to have to skedaddle through some of these questions. Now,
Okay.
Kendra's question, I think, has been mostly answered. Just real quick, Kendra, fermenting is going to be your friend there. Kathy says, I would like tips on how to... Okay.
This is a great question.
Fibre intake of her extremely fussy 3-year-old. Basically, if it's not white carbs, cheese, or milk, she won't have it. And she struggles with bowel movements, as you would suspect, with very little fibre. And before you answer, Cassie, my top tip is absolutely boosters. If anyone ever asks, how do you transition to a healthier way of eating? My 2 tips are always, 1, simple swaps, which, obviously we've spoken a little bit about in the challenge already. We're going to swap the white for the brown and this and that. But I see that your very fussy 3-year-old may not be too happy with that. So what you then can move on to is the second tip, which is boosting what you're already doing with things that you can disguise. And so we've gone through a little bit about things that you can do to boost those meals. And I'm happy to actually have a blog about boosting. I might just post
cool. Yeah.
So, Kirsty, what would you say to Kathy about that?
Well, it's actually great because Diana N there has a great question about conflicting information about gluten and dairy with ghee, sourdough, yogurts, all those sorts of things. So thank you for putting that up there. So Diana, when I talk about sourdough, it's the cultured wellness diversity dough, which is completely grain-free. So it's not only gluten-free, but it's completely grain-free. So I totally agree with you that it can get confusing, but I just wanted to clear that up. Also, ghee has no casein protein in it. It's just the fat from the butter. And it's 99.8% casein free, and so anyone who cannot handle dairy will be fine with ghee. Very, very, very rarely do we see someone in our clinic that can't handle ghee, but lots of people that can't handle butter. So I just wanted to clarify that. And Cassie, this will be very interesting for you. So children that are addicted to white foods, number one, you kind of have to rip it off like a Band-Aid. So you have to take them out of the equation. So if the boosting doesn't work, which is step 1, as Lainey said, then you've really, really got to go in there and you actually just have to take it out of their diet. And you need support with that. So, I highly recommend that you get some support. Interestingly, gluten and dairy, which are the two sort of big compounds that you've mentioned there, if our gut doesn't work and we're not digesting it and we have leaky gut, those big protein molecules from the gluten and dairy, they actually leak into your bloodstream and they act like a morphine-like behavior in the brain. So they spark an addictive dopamine response in kids, and they just want more and more and more, and they behave like crack addicts. It's like they will not rest until they get it, and they will only eat those foods, and it doesn't matter what you do. They won't eat anything else, and their behavior will be absolutely shocking if you try and offer something else. So reach out. Like that's, we deal with kids like that who've got this brain gut inflammation going on where it is literally like a drug addict and how they behave. So but you can change that, but that's my classic saying, just rip it off like a Band-Aid. They're addicted because it's still in the house, and who's buying it? So yeah, but it's tricky. It's really tough, but that's quite common. So don't feel like it's just you at home struggling with that. It's a really common thing.
That actually makes complete sense with, some things that I've seen with particularly my nephew who sounds a lot like Cassie's 3-year-old, and it's very difficult when he comes to stay here. Sometimes he doesn't want to come to stay because he's worried about he won't have his bed and he won't have his, the regular stuff, and that makes me sad. But at the same time, it's about teaching them, well, actually, you can survive without this stuff, and let's do it. So
Yeah.
but there's more to it with your coaching, with what you do with people. So it's interesting to go down that track and actually get the support that you do need for that.
Yeah. And Cassie, you'll know, like you'll see them on a high after they've eaten it, and then you'll see them crash and then start to crave it, and you start to see this going up and down. So yeah, but it can be changed. My son was Mr. White Food, just give it to me, and it's terrible.
Kirsty, Diana's just come back with a clarification question, which I think might be great to touch on just real quick. She says, but if the gut is but that's if the gut is unhealthy, correct? That's talking about the inflammatory grains and dairy. So wheat and dairy can be consumed with health benefits when the gut is healthy and not leaky? Question mark.
Yes, absolutely. And when the wheat and dairy that you're consuming doesn't have things like glyphosate and chemicals. So once again, exactly what Lainey says, going for whole foods, going for organic foods, making sure you know where your food's coming from. But if you've got a rocking gut and it works beautifully, the health benefits of those foods are wonderful. Yeah. Naomi, when you say support, who do you go to when you have a 4-year-old crack addict? I love that. That's why you go to Culture Wellness. Like literally we guide families through exactly what to do, and we hold their hands and we're by them every step of the way. So you go to us for the crack addicts. We've got a lot of experience.
Vanessa, for Baker's Delight bread, let's dig into that at another time, because there's a lot of things on that ingredient list. The first thing you want to do is turn around that label, have a look at the ingredient list, and see what's in there that's not just whole grains, water, salt, maybe a little bit of yeast, but it's not very quality yeast from Baker's Delight. Yeah. So it might be one step better than, say, some bread that you might buy at the supermarket, but to be very honest, it's not much better. So I hope that answers your question just a little bit. Feel free to PM with some questions about specific ingredients and additives and things, because I like to geek out on that stuff as well.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have a ton of questions about poop that we haven't even gotten to yet. So,
let's go.
I'm just going to, will I jump some questions? Okay, let's do some rapid fire questions so that then we can get into the poop questions, which is obviously what people really want to know about most. So real quick, does something like green banana resistant starch in a smoothie help that smoothie be slowly digested and help with our gut health? Or because the other foods are also whole foods, it supports each other for helping with our gut health? That sounded a little bit confusing. Did you get the gist of what that question was?
So yes and yes. That's basically yes, the green banana flour will blunt that insulin and it will support the digestion of it. And they all work in unison with each other because they're all different types of fibers. So yes.
Great. What about nutritional yeast flakes? They're these yellow flakes that often people who are not having dairy will add to their meals for that cheesy flavor. Nutritional yeast flakes, what's your take on those?
So obviously a fantastic quality source is absolutely necessary. Do you guys have nutritional yeast in your?
We do, yeah.
Yeah, perfect.
We had to get one. I don't know where it's gone.
So as long as the source is wonderful and great quality, and just making sure that if you don't have any candida issues, thrush, any of those sorts of problems, then you'll be fine to have it. But if you've got any of those issues, then you'd want to stay away from it until you'd solve those issues. Great for B12. Awesome for B12.
Yeah. Alicia was saying that when she had black chia seeds, she couldn't tolerate them very well, and she was wondering if the white chia seeds would be any different. Alicia, the black and the white chia seeds are not different nutritionally if they are just super, super, super marginally. So if you're not tolerating the black chia seeds, it's likely going to be the same with the white. But Kirsty, what would be your next step advice for Alicia to investigate what's going on there?
Yeah, so same, like they're both going to have the same problem. So Yeah, I would look at what's going on with your digestion and how are you preparing them. So you might want to soak them overnight to make them easier to handle, or just start really low and slow. You might just be having too much at once.
I think I know the answer to your next question, to the next question. The question is about soda streams. Now, we know that the syrups that go into the soda streams are obviously no. We're not going to even bother talking about the syrups. But what about just carbonating the water? If you like fizzy water and it's going to encourage you to drink more water and be more hydrated to help that fibre do its job, what's your take on soda streams?
So soda streams are actually quite awesome because they help with your blood. They actually help with the relaxation pathways. So Kylie, who's our programs manager, she is a Buteyko breathing practitioner, and she has helped me incredibly when I'm about to go and speak. She always gives me a carbonated drink because it supports all of your pathways and helps with getting the right amount of oxygenation in your bloodstream. So we don't want to say no to the soda stream because it's actually really, really cool. And that's why some people drink it and they do feel really relaxed. They feel wonderful. But of course, if you have too much, it's going to cause distress with your gut. So moderation is the answer to that. But it's pretty cool. There's some very techie stuff, which I won't go into, about what the carbon does in your body.
Interesting topic for another day, I think.
Yeah.
Tash said she thought of a question when she was doing the sesame seed challenge and noticing that those sesame seeds passed through her system undigested. She was wondering, does that mean that we're not actually absorbing nutrients from them when we eat them normally?
Okay, so it's very common for sesame seeds to be passed through undigested. So don't be worried too much about that. If you put them in a stir fry, if you cook them, there's more of a chance of them being digested and assimilating zinc, which is a really big one in sesame seeds. So, but it doesn't really give you an indication of if you're having other undigested food coming through. So just look at your stools all the time. It's going to tell you if you've got any undigested food in there.
So tell me on this one, though, what about if it's made into a tahini? So we know tahini spread is just sesame seeds ground up. If it's made into a tahini, does that mean that we've got a greater chance of absorbing those nutrients? Yeah.
So by blending it, we're breaking down that cellulose outer. And so this is going to be so much easier for our gut to handle. So definitely you're going to assimilate much, much more of it.
Beautiful. All right, let's shift gears into hormones. That was actually a really interesting topic for day one. It was something that kind of blew my mind when I first learned about how fibre can help us balance our hormone health. What do we do if we're having plenty of fibre, but we still have suspicions that our hormones are a bit out of whack? What can we do then?
Yeah, okay. So there's some awesome testing that you can do for your hormones. So number one, do not put up with it, and I don't want to hear this, well, I'm in my mid-40s, my mum was a nutbag when she went through menopause, so I suppose that's just what's going to happen to me. So, I just do not go through that cycle again. So the test that we use at Culture Wellness is the Dutch panel test, and it is amazing. It shows us everything that is going on in your body with regards to its hormones. And it's actually collected as a dried urine test over the whole day. So we get to see what's the morning cortisol doing, what's the evening cortisol doing, what's our estrogen doing. Are we actually assimilating BPA plastics from our coffee cups, and that's actually spiking our estrogen levels and causing all these problems? So the Dutch test is incredible. It tells you a lot about your progesterone with regards to your estrogen, your testosterone, your androgens. Absolutely. And if I had my way, all women sort of over 40 should get that Dutch hormone panel test done very regularly. And you've just frozen. So if you guys can hear me, can you just let me know by writing, have I frozen or has Lainey frozen? So if you can just write in there who has frozen, because I will just keep talking until Lainey pops in again, but it seems like she may have frozen. Now, Jen, with the hormone panel test, we do it at day 21. And so it shows a snapshot in time when your hormones are needing to be looked at most. So it's that day 21 that we look at. If you don't have a cycle, then you can take it at any time. Okay, so definitely, Katie, the hormones, there is a lot of gut dysbiosis and there is a huge connection between endometriosis. So I would be getting that looked at and making sure that you get a test and don't guess. Now, Lainey has dropped off, and so here I am. I'm going to continue on my own with these questions. So one of the questions here was, once we start increasing our fibre intake, how soon after would we start to see the benefits in regards to hormone regulation? Now, that is going to be different for everybody. So we can start to see changes in, 3 months. We can certainly, for some people, we can start to see changes just in a month. If you don't start seeing changes within 3 months, then we know we need to do more work. So we organise the Dutch hormone panel test for all of our clients. So if you would like to do that, you can do that through Cultured Wellness. And we also do everything online. So if you needed to organise that, that's very easy to do. Welcome back, Lainey. I just asked everyone, was it you or me that froze? And when I found out it was you, I just kept running with it. So
beautiful. I cut you off too, so that's great.
Yeah, beautiful. Excellent. So we've just talked about Claire's question there. So we're on to the next one.
All right, now we enter the world of stools. And this is where a lot of the questions were, as I said. So the first question is actually connected with those hormones again. People's stools are changing according to where they are in their cycle. So why is that? And is that okay?
Yeah, so obviously our cycles go up and down. We have our progesterone that peaks at a certain point, and we also have our estrogen that peaks at a certain point. When our estrogen goes up, it certainly impacts the amount of circulating blood glucose, which then can have an impact on dysbiosis in our gut. And then we can start to see diarrhea. We generally see a lot of diarrhea as we're going into our cycle. And there's also certain hormones that are released during the end of our period and as you're starting to get your cycle and during labor that stimulate motility and increase our bowel motion. So it is quite common. But at that time, I would highly recommend, upping your fibre so you can mop it up and you can help to excrete it. But it is normal, sort of. But it's worth investigating.
Okay, interesting. Okay, so Lisa's asking, aside from the texture of the stool, what else should we be looking for? So we're talking about, we looked at that Bristol stool chart and we were looking at getting those stools to a number 3 or number 4. So aside from the texture, are we looking for bits of undigested food, so mucus, smell, colour? How do those things come into play when we're looking for red flags?
Yeah, all of those things. So is it frothy? Is it yellow? So if it's yellow, then our liver is under stress. Our gallbladder is under stress. Is it burning? Yellow. Yeah. So if it's yellow, then I want to get a liver test. I want to find out what's going on with the gallbladder, and I want to make sure that that's really well supported. If it's stinging, like if it's really, really stingy and acidic on the way out, then we know that there's probably some parasites or some pretty hefty dudes hanging out in there that are changing the pH, and then suddenly you've got hemorrhoids. So, you want to make sure that all of those things are addressed, and you don't want black tar either. So, and you want to make sure that it's not pellets and it's not runny. You do really want it to be in that sweet spot, and it shouldn't be like this far off dream that it happened once in 1989. Like, this should be happening every day.
Well, I think so often we get into these digestive habits and we get used to what we're used to, and life is busy, and we might go. I remember on my honeymoon, I had 8 days in Fiji.
Oh.
No number 2s the whole time.
Oh,
it was incredible. I'm surprised I survived it. It was just incredible. And so I think that I mean, that was a bit of an extreme example, but I think sometimes day to day that we can really not pay attention and just be used to what we're used to. So I think this experience of going through and going, okay, let's look at the Bristol stool chart. Where am I at is so important.
Yeah. The other thing to look for that I missed as well is we call it incomplete evacuation, and it happens really, really regularly where you go, you feel like there's more in there, but it won't come out. You kind of hang out for a while and then you're like, oh, I'll just get up and I'll go. But I still haven't completed the evacuation. It feels like there's still stuff in there. If that's happening for you, I would highly recommend a squatty potty. So a squatty potty is where you have a little stool and it puts you put your feet up on the stool, and it actually changes your whole anatomy so the stool can come out, because ideally we should squat when we go to the toilet. And that's, how our bodies were designed. We weren't designed to be all prim and proper and sitting on the throne. So we should be squatting, and the squatty potties are great because it puts us in that squat position without having to go out behind a tree and dig a hole. So like if we're camping. So look into a squatty potty. They are amazing, and it will help with that incomplete evacuation.
Beautiful. What about stools that float or stools that sink? Is one better than the other?
Yeah, so if they float and they're a little bit yellow, which is really common, then we know that there's a lot of undigested or malabsorbed fat in the diet. And if they sink, we know that there's not enough fibre in the diet, there's not enough, beautiful hydration in the stools. And that's when they generally come with that black tar as well. So, but you certainly don't want them to be floating because, and normally when you see them float, they've got like an oil slick on them and they're generally more yellow. So you want to watch out for those things.
Biggie has a good question. I've just figured out how we can show it on the screen. What does it mean if your child complains of a sore tummy, does a poop, and then feels fine? Is it just that they've waited too long and there's a sense of urgency and cramping going on, or is there?
Yeah. So, depending on the age of the child, they might not have worked out those cues yet and they have actually just left it too long. If they've got pain and then they go to the toilet and it's more diarrhea, then we certainly would be looking at worms and parasites for the child, because generally cramping and diarrhea goes along with some form of gut dysbiosis. So it's a bit hard for me to tell because there's so many anomalies with that one.
Yeah. Diane, was it Diane? Yes, it was Diane. She was saying that some days she can have a nice normal stool, but most days she doesn't because she's on a medication, and that's just the side effect. And her doctor really didn't have much helpful information for her. For all those people who are on medication, what advice would you give for them to help improve their digestion?
Yeah, okay. So the most important thing with that is to remember that our liver is really intricately linked to our digestion, how we evacuate, and our motility. And obviously our liver has a huge part to play in metabolizing and supporting us to utilize and then, of course, excrete the medication. So if you've got these ups and downs happening with your stool and you're on medication, I would be actually looking at supporting your liver to be able to utilize and get rid of that medication once, it's been absorbed. And then after that, looking at, does the medication put, you under any stress, because stress is going to impact your digestion and your motility. But yeah, I'd be looking to the liver on that one.
The liver seems to be the thing that we need to look at all the time.
I know, but I didn't know 10 years ago when I started understanding gut health that my liver had anything to do with the poo that came out the other end. I had no idea. I didn't even know what my liver got up to half the time, but it has a huge part to play.
Absolutely. I'm going to skip. I want these ones to go. So let's quickly talk colonics. Are you pro or anti colonics? Or have you got that wise in the middle? answer?
No. So if someone has a lot of compaction, absolutely colonics for a period of time are absolutely wonderful, but we don't need to be doing them all the time. And if people that come and work with us, they're completely reliant on colonics. And if that's someone, then, we need to investigate. You don't want to be reliant on them. It's a once every 3 months kind of thing, or 6 months.
Okay, that's good to know. What about baby? What colour should their poops be?
Colonic?
Rainbow, right?
Yeah. Oh, goodness me. So that's going to depend on what they're eating. It's going to depend on what mum's eating. It's going to depend on their microbiome and if they're breastfed or bottle fed. There are so many things to do with babies that, and it's very, very particular to each individual child. It's a bit hard. We have to do another whole one on that, I think.
Yeah, I think after having a few kids myself, the amount of different kinds of poos that I have seen come out of those little children is phenomenal.
Yeah.
We're about to finish our questions on number 2s, but before we do that, Christine has a question. What about really light white cream coloured poop?
Yeah, okay. So I would really be investigating that. If you're looking at that sort of colour, then the gallbladder and the liver aren't actually squirting out the bile. The bile emulsifies the fat and supports the digestion and gives the poo the colour that it, the brown colour. And so there's a bit of an upstream issue going on there. And whenever I see white cream coloured poop, I'm always thinking thrush, candida, fungus, those kinds of things. So yeah, you'd want to get that investigate. You don't want white poo.
Okay. There's a question that's come through about hemorrhoids. This person doesn't suffer pain with hemorrhoids. It seems to be a historical issue that she's had, but the hemorrhoids have remained physically there. Is there a way to get rid of them, or is that just something that she'll have for life now?
So the hemorrhoids will still be there if the pH and the microbes in the colon and coming out are still in dysbiosis. So it might not be causing any problems, but it is still out of balance. So yeah, I would be investigating and having a look into that, but also adding in fermented foods. So the coconut yogurt would be amazing for that, because it will start to enable the right microbes and the right pH to get rid of those hemorrhoids. So when we work with people on our programs, they have like hemorrhoids for 20 years. And as soon as you start the fermented foods and get that digestion working, they go away.
Interesting. It's so fascinating. And there's actually lots of people in the group who seem to be suffering from IBS and SIBO and I can't even say it, diverticulitis. So Christine has asked, with IBS, there are some issues with what she can and she can't eat. So how do we handle that when it comes to wanting to have lots of fibre but struggling with those issues?
Yeah. So the first thing is so IBS is this wonderful blanket, you've got an irritable bowel, but it doesn't actually tell you what's wrong with your bowel. It's just telling you that it's irritable. It's like with a child, like that child's cranky, but why is the child cranky? Did they not get their afternoon sleep? Did they not get to watch the movie that they want to watch? And so firstly, never rest with someone telling you you've got irritable bowel and not giving you any more answers. So I would be investigating, why is my gut inflamed? Is it from a parasite? Is it from the foods that I'm eating? Is it because I'm super stressed? Is it because I'm not digesting my food? Why is it irritable, and what do I need to do about it? So, and with irritable bowel, there's so many things that you can do. And most people have to go really low on the fibre until they work out and find out the reason what's going on there, and do some herbal remedies, do some cleanses, and start to rebalance the gut. So then you can start to elaborate on your food and get back to eating a nice high fibre diet.
It's amazing how often we talk about symptoms and not cause in the medical world. It is amazing. So that's another example of that. And you did mention parasites. So it's a good time to bring Raylene into the convo. What's the best way to get rid of parasites?
Yes. So we do a parasite cleanse with our clients. So we utilize a ketogenic diet. We use a lot of functional fermented foods. We, with our practitioner team, we prescribe therapeutic herbs that go in and actually get rid of the parasites. We do a lot of biofilm work, and then we rebuild the gut with fermented foods and the right herbs and foods to line the gut so it's not so inflamed, so you can build new microbes in there. So you can get rid of them, but it's there's a structured approach to it. You can't just go around scattergunning and on a full moon take some Combantrum and off you go. They're too smart. It does not work. Don't go Combantrum. It just does not work. Yes, but you can get rid of them, and we have our beautiful cleansers, our parasite cleansers that we have for our clients to do that.
Okay. Anya had a question, and it's actually something that I did see pop up quite a few times in the group. She says, at times she can trouble talking about the Bristol stool chart, referring to the number 1 through 6 or 7, whatever it went to. You can travel from a number 1 all the way through to a number 5 within a day. And the GP says that it might be IBS. What would be your advice there?
Yeah, so when you've got, and often some people will start their stool when they're evacuating and it's nice, and then the end kind of just all ends up with this horrible sort of number 7 watery diarrhea. And so that looks at your transit time. So your transit time might be changing. And so it's fine at the start, and then you've eaten something that's inflamed your gut and your transit time is just really quick and just ends up. If it's changing and you can't put your finger on it, I would almost guarantee that it's stress. So we can literally change our stools from eating exactly the same thing every day, and just with stress and lack of sleep and a lack of sunlight and being out in nature, we can change our stools. So if you're all over the place, yeah, I'd be looking at your lifestyle patterns and what you're doing with your lifestyle, and the inflammatory foods that you have in your diet.
It's a beautiful puzzle, isn't it? Our health.
I love it.
Food, we've got our sleep, we've got our stress, we've got all these things that we need to consider. And, that's why it's not an overnight approach. It really is something that we dedicate ourselves to as a lifestyle. And it can be very powerful when we do that.
Yeah.
Melanie has asked, she says, I think I have IBS. I'm super bloated and gassy with every meal I eat. What fiber should I focus on? I currently eat lots of veggies, fruit, beans, and rice.
Okay, beautiful. So if you're super bloaty and super gassy, to me, that would be sort of a bit of an alarm that there's probably not enough beautiful gut bacteria in your gut to digest all of the fiber that you're putting in there. So it's like there's not the army's not in there to do what it needs to do when you're dumping the food into your gut. So I would go a lot lower and slower with the fiber that you're eating, and I would add fermented foods in there to make sure that you've got all those beautiful beneficial microbes to help you digest that fiber. But if you're bloated and gassy, I would say there's some horrible dude in there that shouldn't be in there, and I would want to find out. So I'd be getting some investigation. Have you got Dientamoeba fragilis? Have you got blasto? What's going on in your gut that is causing that change, because it shouldn't be happening that way.
All right, Kirsty, I've just noticed the time, and so I'm just folding some questions so I can come back and send those to you at another time. Would you, would you be happy to talk about one more topic of questions, which is the transit time, and then we can maybe leave it there for tonight?
Yes, so transit time. So that is really important. So I can't wait to see all the comments. I'm going to go and look at it when we get off here. But someone asked a question about, well, I can't check my transit time because sesame seeds just do not work for me. And you can check your transit time by using like beetroot. So you can eat beetroot because obviously it's very red and it's very obvious when beetroot comes out. So that's a great way of checking it if you can't have the sesame seeds. Your transit time, absolutely, you want to be going for that 12 to 24 hours. If your transit time is 2 hours, 20 minutes, 4 hours, those sorts of things, then we know that your gut's really inflamed and that there is something going on in there that you want to fix. So even if your stools are solid, but there's urgency or you're going too quickly, then we want to investigate that. Because remember, the reason why we eat is to assimilate all the nutrients so we have energy. It's too quick to do all those things if your transit time's 2 hours. You just won't get any energy out of it. So, it's not like you're a straight A student if you can whack those stools out nice and quickly. So you want to make sure you get the right transit time.
And what if it's too long?
If it's too long, so constipation, then number one, look at your, as we were talking about before, hydration. But also, we know that our motility is affected by things like serotonin. So if we're low in our mood and if we're feeling really flat, serotonin, which helps us with our mood, also plays a huge part in our peristaltic action. And so it plays a huge part in getting out the stool. So, we often see a lot of people that feel really flat, don't feel themselves, and they're constipated. And that's got a lot to do with our building blocks and our neurotransmitters and not having the microbes to make those neurotransmitters. And why is that happening? But sometimes it is just as simple as hydration or not enough fiber. Sometimes it's as simple as that. Other times we have to look a bit more closely. But certainly up your fiber, up your hydration, get yourself a squatty potty, do some nice deep breathing. Don't get up and just rush out the door. Give your body time to eliminate in the morning. But don't wake up all stressed. You will not be able to eliminate.
Okay. I have a question for me, actually. When I did the Sesame Seed Challenge, I'm going to become a little bit open with everyone here. I was 21 hours. The first sesame seeds that I noticed was 21 hours. But then I was actually quite surprised about 6 to 8 hours later, when I had another movement, there was a lot more sesame seeds that I noticed then. So one teaspoon of sesame seeds was divided into 2 different stools. So does that mean anything?
Yeah. So there's definitely some long transit time there and an incomplete evacuation. So squatty potty for you.
It didn't feel like that, though. It felt complete.
But that's the thing. What does a complete evacuation feel like if you've always had incomplete evacuation and you've not used a squatty potty? But it may be fine to separate it, but when you're having only a teaspoon, it should all come through at the same time. So and it could just be that you were stressed in the morning when you wanted, if it was in the morning when you wanted to evacuate as well, and the peristaltic action and the motility just wasn't as robust as it should be at that time. I would not be able to get 5 kids ready for school, so I even.
Well, I'm doing all the challenge work before even getting them ready for school, so it was probably quite realistic that I was stressed. Interesting. Guys, it's 9:15. We've still got 30 questions left on this document at least. We're not going to get through them all. I know that there's more questions here in the live chat too. I will compile them, send them through to Kirsty, and see if we can sort of bulk them into categories and just have 5 or 6 main responses even.
I will see if I can jump on and do another live, which would be really cool to get through them. I talk too much, so it's very difficult. It's
hard to get through, and it's difficult to cover that much.
Yeah, but there's been a lot of questions about where is your clinic, what tests do you get done, all of those sorts of questions. So the Culture Wellness clinic is all online, and so we see people all over the world. So you can book in to see one of our practitioners if you need that, and it's all online. And I'm sure you'll send everyone over to Culture Wellness, but yes, it's easy for everyone to see us. If you've got problems, certainly reach out.
I actually plan to go and see you myself, actually.
Yes. Don't you worry. When you said it, I will hold you to that. Don't you worry about that.
So dinner recently, me coming along, and I joked because as you guys saw in my Sesame Seed Challenge, I can be a big wuss. And so I've been putting off going to see Kirsty for quite a long time. So it's I've definitely it's time. It's
The
time
time
to
is now.
But I want to say thank you for your involvement in the challenge. We've still got another day, so this is not goodbye. But I also want to say thank you for giving of your time in this Q&A. Tomorrow, I'm actually going to send everyone information about how they can get their hands on fiber-rich foods at the Whole Food Collective that have been highly vetted by yourself and 4 other experts in Australia. And also we're launching some brand new fiber-rich blends as well, which we're very excited about. And then also you have a really great deal going on some very special products over there, including the Diversity dough. So we're going to give everyone all those details tomorrow. And Kirsty, I'll get someone, maybe Kylie, who's online now, if she can send me some information about contacting you for all the programs as well, because I think that's a very valuable place to go to start figuring out what exactly is happening and what issues there. So we'll do all of that tomorrow, guys.
Beautiful. And also, if you want to learn more and if you want more information, I'm just about to start a case study series. So we've been inviting all of our community to write their health histories and all of their case, their stories. And we've been formulating this beautiful case study. So I'm about to go on a big mission of doing a whole heap of lectures on people's case studies and what's happening for them, how we would treat them at Culture Wellness and what to look out for. So if the gut health world is new to you and you want to learn a lot more, that's coming out in a couple of weeks, and do not miss it because it's all live, free, easy like this. So you can just listen when you're at home and learn. Just keep learning, please. It will change your life. Just keep learning. It's very important.
And we see those comments coming through from people all the time, both at the Whole Food Collective or when I'm in the Cultured Wellness community groups, which I'm often in there looking at what's going on. I often see comments from people saying that just by showing up like you have done over this 10 days, really can flick a switch for your family, because it may not be really quick changes. It might be just little small changes here and there. And over time, you're becoming more aware and you're putting little small changes in place. Even like drinking more water, such a small change, but such a powerful change. And so it really is quite exciting that we can both be involved in these experiences where we get to play that small part in helping people along. So it's been very fun.
Yeah, cool. Well, thank you for having me. That's been awesome.
Thank you for being here. Thanks. And thanks everyone for being online. It's been fun to have you all engaged and asking all your It's not every day that you get to talk this deeply about number 2. So I don't know who's been listening in your homes, like beside you on the couch or whatever, but it's quite a rare conversation to have, but so needed. So thank you, everyone.
Cool. All righty, everyone. I'll speak to you soon.
Good night.
Thanks, Lainey. Bye.